my name is Grace. I read 10 books. Over October and November of this year, and I want to tell you about them. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first book I read in October was Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is a collection of short stories. This is the first book I've read by Jhumpa Lahiri. I've been really interested in reading her work, and I'm so glad I finally did because it's gorgeous. This is also maybe the first short story collection I've read since I've gotten back into reading in the past couple of years, and it was super enjoyable. I can totally see why it won the Pulitzer Prize because each story, I can remember them vividly. They were so poignant and emotionally really touching. And the characters are really vivid, and each story was very clear and distinct from the others. So if you're looking for a short story collection, like a literary short story collection, I would really recommend this one. It was beautiful. Next, I was kind of wanting to push myself for October and read some spooky books. So I read Beloved by Toni Morrison, which is a very a classic kind of gothic horror. And I want to read more Toni Morrison. I think she's a very gifted writer. I don't think horror is for me. So I totally see the merits of this book and why it's so important. And I found many remarkable moments from it that I wanted to take note of. I didn't love it just because it's not the kind of book that I love to read. Very heavy content and topics discussed. Yeah, so it's a really important book. It's also a book that gets banned a lot, and I'm glad I read it to understand the book more and see what people are so afraid of inside of it. This book deals heavily with the topic of slavery and the trauma of slavery, and that is hard to read, but it's important to read. So I didn't enjoy it necessarily, but I'm really glad I read it, and I am determined to read more Toni Morrison and learn from her. Next, I kind of needed to lighten it up a little bit after Beloved, so I picked up Legend Board by Tracy Deonn. This is another book that has a ton of hype around it. I was very excited. I don't read a lot of YA. I'm kind of picky with the YA that I do read, and I loved this one. I'm glad that I listened to all the hype that it's getting because it's well deserved. I guess it would be described as an urban fantasy. It's a fantasy that takes place in our world today. And it's a really, really cool spin on Arthurian legend, which I love. And I really love this, totally enjoyed it. There's a lot of action. Our main character is Black and is in a predominantly white community on this college campus that she ends up finding herself. And so there is a lot of commentary and examples of racism that she deals with, but there's also just it's about grief, and it's about generational trauma, and it's about kind of finding your own story, and it's just really, really good. There's a love triangle. We love the YA love triangle. I was totally absorbed in it, and I would highly recommend Legend Board. Next, I read from the library Why Didn't You Tell Me by Carmen Rita Wong. It's a memoir about this family secret, basically. Carmen grew up with a Dominican mom and a Chinese dad, and then they separate. Her mom gets married to a white man, and there's all of this tension in her family. And basically, you start out the book knowing that there's a secret her mom is hiding from her. And so the title of the book, the whole question is, why didn't you tell me? And each chapter is kind of a vignette or a glimpse into a different portion of her life and her mother's life, and is kind of a different answer to the question of why didn't you tell me? I thought the writing was beautiful. I did enjoy the book. I kind of wish the actual secret would have maybe come out earlier in the book so we could follow the aftermath of that. It's not revealed until much, much later in the memoir. And I don't know, the pacing of it for me was a little off, but I am really grateful that Carmen shared her story with us. And it's a great memoir. It talks a lot about race and identity in the United States, and I would recommend it. And then my last read of October was Keeper by Amy Dawes. you know, I'm in my Kindle Unlimited phase, my soccer romance era, and this one was fine. I didn't like it as much as the first one. The first one was kind of like forbidden workplace romance, and this one was sort of like, I guess it was supposed to be like enemies to lovers or like dislike to love. I have found that I prefer a little bit more of a slow burn in my romance, meaning like I kind of would like them to not hook up until like at least the halfway point, and they consummated their relationship much earlier than that in this book, and so it was kind of like boring for me after that. But it was an easy read, super fun, so, and it's like very low stakes. So if you've started the series and you're looking to continue, I don't see any need to skip this one, but it wasn't my favorite. Okay, then on to November. Started with high expectations, The Marriage Portrait by Maggie O'Farrell. Really wanted to love this one, and I didn't. It was like a 3-star read for me. I love Maggie O'Farrell's writing, and the style and the ambiance kind of reminded me of Hamnet. And I found myself comparing it to Hamnet a lot, which I think is like gonna set any book up for failure, because Hamnet's one of my favorite books of all time. I have one little sticky note. It's not what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to knock my socks off, and it was just fine. I do think it's beautiful, and I think a lot of people will enjoy it. I saw that it got selected for Reese Witherspoon's book club as kind of like a historical fiction, true crime. I would say it kind of falls under that category. The main character, you find out in the beginning that she is killed, and you kind of spend the book trying to figure out what happened and how it happened and all that stuff. So it was good. It's a good book. It wasn't everything I wanted it to be, and so I was a little disappointed by that. Okay, next I read, and at this point I was doing the Bloom and Readathon, which I was woefully unsuccessful. I had a very ambitious TBR, and I only read 5 books this month, which is fine. Any reading is better than no reading. So my next book that I read was Each Little Bird That Sings by Deborah Wiles. And I wept reading this book. This little sticker right here gets me every time. It was so beautiful and sad, and just like the simplicity of a middle grade is so resonant with me, and like really plucks at my heartstrings. So it's about this girl, Comfort, who her family owns a funeral home. And it basically is a book about death and how death touches us and how we can comfort others in death. And it's about being a kid and how frustrating it can be to like deal with people you don't like, or when your friend, there's just like a lot of great, very human experiences throughout this book. But I was like, I guess ages 8 to 12, I don't have a good barometer for like what middle grade means, because ages 8 to 12, I was like weeping. And I was like, they let children read this? This is so sad. I was like, really, I remember saying, I was like, they let children read this book? But hey, you gotta go through it at some point, you know? So I think if you are an adult that wants to cry, or that enjoys middle grade, I think it's a great option. I think it'll be great for kids as well. Like I said, in the appropriate, at least 8 years old and upward. It would start a lot of great discussions around the home. So next, I read Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and this was a long-awaited, very anticipated read for me. I've been hearing about it all over the internet, and after I read Song for the Wild Bill, I really was craving like cozy fantasy and was doing everything in my power to discover more, and this is obviously like quintessential cozy fantasy. It's about an orc that gives up her adventuring, fighting ways and starts a coffee shop, and it's basically just like a day in the life about her running the coffee shop. And there is like a plot line of like, oh no, somebody's out to destroy the coffee shop, who could it be? But it's like the tagline is kind of like low stakes, high fantasy, and it was so fun. I just like really enjoyed it. My friend Brennan and I are doing a discussion. Actually, the day that I'm filming this, we're doing it tonight. So by the time you watch this video, it'll have already been had. But we're doing like a little book club discussion about this book with some folks. And it's just really, really fun. I would recommend it. And it's definitely a book that I would like reread, that I would turn to again and again, like as a comfort read. It's just really sweet. So if you know of any cozy fantasies, like low fantasy, high fantasy, low stakes, that are just like cozy and warm, please drop them in the comments below. I finally read Convenience Store Woman. It has been a long time coming. I have like said time and time again that I was gonna read it, and I finally did. Translated from Japanese, it's about this woman who basically like works in a convenience store and is like totally content with that. Everybody around her is saying you need to like pursue a career or get married or do something with your life. And she's just like, I love working in a convenience store and this is who I am. And it's a short read. It's like pretty easy to breeze through. And I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I liked kind of just like the simple mundanity, the way that the main character just like loves the work that they do was like so sweet and like sincere. Yeah, and so I'm glad I finally read it. And then my last read of November was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. So I'm getting into kind of like dark romance, like mafia romance, which is what this is. So it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet retelling, like she's from the Italian mafia and he's from the Irish mob. I don't know the difference between the two. And they hate each other, and then they have to, I'm just like giving you the synopsis of the book. They hate each other and then they have to get married. And then romance ensues. And it was fun. It was like really fun. I think whenever I'm in need of a romance fix, I will return to like Sophie Lark and kind of go through the series. I know that she's written a ton of books. And I know that there's kind of like a suggested order of reading them. So I'm gonna do that. That's my plan, and I think that'll be super fun. So those are the 10 books that I read, had a good time. December starting off strong, trying to finish the year on like a good note, just reading books that I think I'll really enjoy, that I can read quickly. Yeah, so if you have read any of these books, I'd love to know your thoughts. If you want to read any of these books, let me know. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.